The sound of metal scraping against concrete echoed through the empty yard as Daniel lifted the lid of the old storage unit he had just won at auction. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight filtering through the gaps in the dilapidated walls. This particular unit had caught his eye not for its contents but for its low price. He hadn't expected much more than broken furniture and forgotten trinkets. Yet among the discarded items, a military green safe stood out. A relic of a bygone era, forgotten like the rest. Curiosity gnawed at him as he hoisted the safe into the bed of his old pickup truck. The engine coughed to life, rattling as he backed out of the lot. He could already hear his buddy Frank rolling his eyes at the sight of it. Frank, a retired locksmith with a knack for puzzles, was the only person he trusted to help crack it open. Daniel's mind raced with thoughts of what might be inside. Old cash? Family heirlooms? Or perhaps something sinister? As Daniel drove home, the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows over the winding roads of Columbia, Missouri. The air was thick with the scent of freshly cut grass and the faint sound of cicadas buzzing in the distance. Windows down, he felt the cool breeze on his face, a perfect contrast to the anticipation building in his chest. Each bump in the road seemed to jostle the safe, teasing him with the mystery it held. What stories were locked away? Once in the backyard, surrounded by the familiar sights and sounds of home, Daniel set the safe on the ground. The scent of damp earth mixed with the lingering aroma of the grass he had mowed earlier. Frank arrived, tools in hand, ready for the challenge. "What do you think's inside?" he asked with a grin, his eyes sparkling with the thrill of the unknown as he crouched beside the safe. "I don't know, but it can't be worse than the junk I usually find," Daniel replied, a hint of excitement creeping into his voice. His heart raced as Frank began to work on the lock, the metal clicking under the pressure of expert hands. The world around them faded, leaving only the two men and the heavy silence of anticipation. As the lock clicked open, Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He had no idea what lay beyond the heavy door. Frank pulled it open carefully, and they both leaned in. Inside, they found a dusty road map from 1978, marked with blue ink in a way that told stories of journeys taken long ago. A stack of old, crumpled tickets caught Daniel's eye. Traffic violations paid in cash. His hands trembled with anticipation as he pulled out a yellowed envelope, its seal intact. Intrigued, he unfolded the letter and his breath hitched as he began to read. "To the driver of the red truck I hit at exit 128, it was my fault." The signature was smudged, but the message was clear. In the corner, a phone number jotted down, the number of the shop where he had worked in the 80s. It was a connection to a past he had all but buried. Daniel stood there, holding the letter in his trembling hands, as the weight of its words settled over him like a heavy fog. Memories rushed back, swirling in his mind like fallen leaves caught in a gust of wind. He vividly recalled the red truck, the sound of its engine, the bright paint gleaming under the midday sun, and the way it had crumpled upon impact that fateful day. It was a day that etched itself into his memory, a day he had tried desperately to forget. It had been the summer of 1982. Daniel was a young mechanic, eager to prove himself at the local auto shop. The air was filled with the scent of oil and gasoline, a familiar aroma that usually brought him comfort. But that day was different. The sun hung high, casting sharp shadows across the pavement, and the heat shimmered above the asphalt. He had been driving home after a long shift, his mind racing with thoughts of the next day's work, when he saw the red truck ahead of him. In a moment of distraction, a heartbeat really, he had taken his eyes off the road. The crash was sudden, violent, and the world around him erupted in chaos. He remembered stepping out into that blinding sunlight, panic coursing through his veins as he approached the truck. The driver, an older man with a shock of white hair, climbed out, his face a mixture of shock and anger. Daniel recalled the man's voice, raised in frustration as he shouted about insurance and responsibility. But then, the driver stopped, his expression shifting from anger to something softer. "You all right?" he had asked, his voice steadier than Daniel expected. The kindness in the old man's eyes caught him off guard. Daniel had nodded, swallowing hard against the knot in his throat. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just sorry about your truck." That was the last time he had seen him. The man had walked away, leaving Daniel to face the aftermath alone, a tangle of guilt, regret, and unanswered questions. After that day, the shop buzzed with rumors. Some said the man had disappeared. Others whispered about how he had lost everything. Daniel buried those thoughts deep, pushing them aside as he laughed with friends and drowned his guilt in beer and stories. "Daniel, you all right?" Frank's voice pulled him back to the present, concern etched across his face. The sun began to set, casting a warm glow around them, but the warmth felt distant to Daniel. "Yeah," he murmured, still reeling from the weight of the letter. "I remember him." Frank frowned, studying Daniel's expression. "What do you mean?" Daniel took a deep breath, steadying himself. "I always wondered what happened after that day. I never saw him again." Frank's brow furrowed. "You should reach out. This could be your chance to find closure." A conflict churned within him. He could forget this discovery, toss the contents back into the safe, and let the past remain buried. It would be easy to continue swapping stories over beers, never mentioning the man whose life he may have altered forever. But as he looked at the map, tracing the very route he used to haul used tires, he felt a pull towards the truth, an obligation to seek out the remnants of that road and find the man who had become a ghost. Daniel closed the safe, his hands shaking. Could he really face the past? He glanced at Frank, who seemed to sense the weight of this moment. "What are you thinking?" Frank asked quietly. "I think it's time to make things right," Daniel replied, determination rising within him. "Even if it's just a phone call." Over the next few days, Daniel found himself consumed by the memories that the letter had unearthed. Each night he sat on his porch, the cicadas' chorus filling the air, replaying the events of that day in his mind. It was as if he were reliving the moments, the sights and sounds flickering like an old film reel. With each recollection, the guilt settled heavier in his chest and his resolve tightened. He needed to find the man. He began to make inquiries, reaching out to old friends and acquaintances. The small-town connections were both a blessing and a curse. Everyone seemed to know everyone else, but the whispers of the past were delicate, wrapped in layers of unspoken history. He walked into the local diner, the smell of coffee wafting through the air, and approached the counter where Mrs. Henderson, the owner, was wiping down the surface. "Hey, Mrs. Henderson," he said, forcing a smile. "You remember that accident at exit 128? The red truck?" Her eyes narrowed slightly, and for a moment, he wondered if she would brush him off. But then, a flicker of recognition crossed her face. "Oh, that poor man. I heard he moved away after that. Didn't take it well, I suppose. Lost a lot of his business." Daniel's heart sank. "Do you know where he went?" She shook her head, a sympathetic look in her eyes. "Sorry, hon. I just remember folks saying he didn't stick around. You should try the shop where you used to work. They might have more information." That suggestion weighed heavily on his mind. He hadn't set foot in the shop since that day. A place once filled with laughter and camaraderie now seemed like a ghost town, haunted by memories he had tried to forget. But now he felt an undeniable pull to return, to face the past that had lingered like a shadow. The following afternoon, he drove the familiar route to the shop, the roads lined with overgrown grass and wildflowers. Each turn felt like a step back in time, stirring a mix of nostalgia and trepidation. The shop appeared as he remembered, rusted tools scattered about, the scent of motor oil and gasoline still hanging in the air. As he stepped inside, memories flooded back. The sound of laughter, the clang of metal against metal, and the camaraderie among the mechanics filled his mind. But it was all overshadowed by the lingering sense of guilt. His heart raced as he approached the counter, where old Mr. Thompson, the owner, was busy sorting through paperwork. "Daniel!" Mr. Thompson exclaimed, his eyes widening. Haven't seen you in ages. What brings you back? I'm looking for information about the accident, the red truck. Do you remember? Daniel asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Thompson's expression shifted, the warmth fading slightly. Yeah, I remember. That was a rough day for all of us. You know, he didn't stick around after that. Do you know where he went? Daniel pressed, his heart pounding. He moved to a town not too far from here, but I don't know the name. Just heard he was trying to start fresh. Word was he lost everything. A shame, really. There was a pause, and Daniel could see the pity in Mr. Thompson's eyes. You should have reached out sooner, son. Daniel felt the weight of those words sink in. I know. I've carried this guilt for too long. Mr. Thompson nodded, his expression softening. Well, if you find him, I hope you can make things right. We all make mistakes, Daniel. It's what we do afterward that counts. As he left the shop, Daniel felt a flicker of hope. He had a name, just a name to cling to. Over the next few days, he began calling local towns, asking about the man with no last name, but a red truck and a heavy heart. The responses were mixed. A few knew the name, but others only shrugged with indifference. It was a frustrating and exhausting process, but he felt lighter with each step. The burden of the past was slowly fading, replaced by the hope of redemption. Finally, after several days of searching, he received a breakthrough. A kind voice on the other end of the line mentioned a small hardware store just a few towns over. Yeah, I think he works here, the man said. Always saw him helping folks out. Real good guy, to be honest. Daniel's heart soared. He could hardly believe it. The man was still around, living just a few miles away. The next day, he decided it was time to make the drive. The sun shone brightly, illuminating the road he knew so well. The familiar sights brought a rush of nostalgia. He could almost hear the sound of tires crunching gravel as he parked outside the modest house where the man lived. He sat in his truck for a moment, heart racing, hands gripping the steering wheel. What would he say? What would the man think of him after all these years? But as he gathered his thoughts, he felt a strange sense of peace wash over him. He had to do this. He had to confront the mistakes of his past. As he approached the door, he couldn't shake the feeling of trepidation. He knocked, the sound sharp against the stillness of the day. Moments later, the door opened, and he was met with the familiar face of the man he had wronged. The older man looked different, age etched in his features, but there was no mistaking those kind eyes. I came to apologize, Daniel said, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. I've carried this with me for too long. At first, the man's expression was one of surprise, but then it softened. Daniel, he said, recognition washing over him. I remember you. They stood there, the weight of the past hanging between them like a fragile thread. It was a moment suspended in time, where the years fell away and all that remained was the truth. The man motioned for Daniel to step inside, and as he crossed the threshold, he felt an overwhelming rush of emotions, relief, sorrow, and a hint of hope. They began to talk, not just about that day, but about life, choices, and the roads that led them both here. The man spoke of how the accident had changed everything, how he had struggled to rebuild his life after losing his business and facing the stigma of the accident. Daniel listened, his heart aching at the weight of his words. I didn't know, Daniel admitted, his voice breaking. I never meant for any of this to happen. The man nodded slowly, taking a deep breath. We all make choices, Daniel. Some take us down paths we didn't expect. I've learned to forgive even when it's hard. As they talked, Daniel felt a release, the burden of guilt lifting in the warmth of the man's understanding. It was a conversation long overdue, a chance for both of them to find closure. They shared stories about their lives, the man recounting tales of his children, how they had grown and moved away, and how he had found solace in his work at the hardware store. Daniel shared his own journey, the ups and downs of his career and the relationships he had built along the way. The man spoke of his struggles but also of his resilience, how he had slowly pieced his life back together. "You know," he said, a hint of a smile playing on his lips, "I learned to find joy in the little things. Helping customers at the store, gardening, taking long walks. Life goes on, doesn't it?" Daniel nodded, feeling a sense of kinship. "It does. I've learned that too. I've spent too long worrying about mistakes instead of embracing life." As their conversation flowed, Daniel realized that he had been holding on to the guilt for so long that he had forgotten the beauty of second chances. The man's ability to forgive and his determination to rebuild his life inspired him. It was a reminder that while the past could not be changed, it could be acknowledged and transformed into something meaningful. As he prepared to leave, the man placed a hand on his shoulder. "Thank you for coming, Daniel. It takes courage to face the past." Daniel smiled, feeling lighter than he had in years. The weight of the safe had long since vanished, but what remained was the realization that perhaps it was never too late to seek forgiveness. In the weeks that followed, Daniel often found himself reflecting on that meeting. He would sit on his porch, the soft rustle of leaves in the wind reminding him of the old safe and the secrets it held. The cicadas sang their evening song, and he felt a renewed sense of purpose. His life was not defined by mistakes, but by the choices he made moving forward. He began volunteering at the local community center, helping out with various projects. It felt good to give back, to be part of something larger than himself. The days turned into weeks, and the weight of the past continued to lift. He made new friends, shared laughter, and even found himself smiling more often. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of orange and pink hues, he thought about the open road, the journey still ahead, forever marked by the lessons of the past. He realized that while the road had its bumps and detours, it was also filled with opportunities for growth and redemption. Daniel looked out at the horizon, feeling a sense of peace wash over him. He understood now that sometimes the hardest thing was simply to drive on. Life was a journey, and while he couldn't change the past, he could shape the future. He took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill his lungs, and embraced the moment. It was a new chapter, one that promised hope and renewal. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Daniel felt a sense of contentment he hadn't known in years. The past was a part of him, but it was no longer a weight around his neck. He felt free to move forward, free to make choices that honored the lessons he had learned. The open road stretched before him, filled with possibilities yet to be discovered. And as he sat there, he knew he was ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. The journey continued, and he was finally ready to drive on. As the days turned into weeks, Daniel found himself enveloped in a newfound rhythm. The guilt that had once loomed over him like a dark cloud gradually dissipated, replaced by a refreshing sense of purpose. Embracing the simplicity of life in Columbia, Missouri, he often visited the hardware store where Tom, the man he had wronged, now worked. Each visit felt like a small step toward healing, a journey of redemption that unfurled slowly, much like the pages of a well-loved book. Daniel frequented the store under the pretense of needing supplies for the community garden project, but the truth was that he relished the moments spent with Tom. Their conversations grew richer, filled with wisdom and laughter. Tom had an infectious enthusiasm for gardening, and it was clear to Daniel that his friend found solace in nurturing plants, just as he did in nurturing relationships. One bright afternoon, as Daniel browsed the aisles, he overheard Tom speaking with a couple of customers. "You know," Tom said, "it's the little things that bring joy. A good garden can lift your spirits like nothing else." Daniel paused, reflecting on how true those words were. The community garden they had started together had become a sanctuary for so many, a safe space where people could connect, share, and grow. It reminded him of how the healing process often mirrored the growth of a garden. With care and attention, both could flourish. When the customers left, Daniel approached Tom with a proposal. "Hey, what do you think about collaborating on a workshop series? We could teach people about gardening techniques and the benefits of growing your own food." Tom's eyes lit up. That sounds like a fantastic idea. I'd love to share what I know. Gardening has been my therapy over the years. Excited by the prospect, they began brainstorming topics from basic planting techniques to more advanced topics like permaculture and companion planting. The vision of their workshop series began to take shape, and Daniel felt a renewed sense of purpose. As they met over the following weeks to plan, something wonderful began to unfold in the community. Word of their initiative spread, and soon they found themselves surrounded by a diverse group of enthusiastic volunteers eager to learn and participate. The garden transformed not just into a physical space, but into a symbol of unity, resilience, and growth. One sunny Saturday, Daniel stood in front of a small group gathered at the community garden, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our first gardening workshop. Today we'll be discussing the fundamentals of planting and nurturing your own herbs. Tom stood beside him, ready to step in with his extensive knowledge. As they worked together, sharing tips and techniques, Daniel felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude wash over him. The sense of community they had cultivated was palpable, and he could see the spark of interest in the attendees' eyes. Later that afternoon, as they wrapped up, Daniel noticed a woman standing slightly apart from the group, her arms crossed and a hesitant expression on her face. He approached her, intrigued. "Hey there, I'm Daniel. I noticed you seem a bit unsure. Is this your first time gardening?" She smiled shyly. "Yeah, I've never really done it before. I've always wanted to, but I didn't know where to start. Trust me, we've all been there. I was a novice once too," Daniel replied warmly. "If you're interested, we'd love to have you join our workshops. We're all learning together." The woman's expression changed as her eyes brightened. "Really? That would be great." As the weeks passed, the workshops became a highlight of the community's calendar. Each session drew more attendees, and the garden flourished under their collective care. Tom's expertise, combined with Daniel's organizational skills, created an environment where everyone felt welcomed and valued. One evening, as they prepared for the next workshop, Daniel approached Tom, who was setting out chairs. "I can't believe how much this has grown. It's incredible to see the community come together like this." Tom nodded, a satisfied smile on his face. "It's amazing what happens when people share their passion. Gardening is more than just planting seeds. It's about building connections and nurturing relationships." As summer turned into fall, the garden produced a bounty of fruits and vegetables, and the community celebrated with a harvest festival. The event was filled with laughter, music, and the aroma of freshly prepared dishes made from the garden's harvest. The entire community came together, bringing dishes representing various cultures and traditions, creating a tapestry of flavors and stories. "Daniel!" a voice called out, pulling him from his thoughts. It was Maria, one of the regular volunteers, and she was holding a basket overflowing with tomatoes. "Can you help me set up the table?" "Of course," Daniel replied, a grin spreading across his face. As they set up the tables, Daniel felt a sense of belonging wash over him. This was home. He was surrounded by people who cared, who shared, and who understood the importance of community. The laughter and chatter around him created a warm atmosphere, and he couldn't help but smile as he glanced over at Tom, who was engaged in conversation with another volunteer. The festival kicked off with a heartfelt speech from Daniel, who expressed gratitude to everyone for their hard work. "This garden isn't just about growing food, it's about growing relationships. Thank you all for being part of this journey." Cheers erupted from the crowd, and Daniel's heart swelled with pride. After the speeches, the festivities began in earnest. There were games for the children, music from local bands, and an abundance of food that showcased the diverse culinary traditions of the community. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the garden, Daniel joined Tom at the front of the gathering. "What an incredible day, huh?" Tom said, his face aglow with joy. "Absolutely. I never imagined we could create something so beautiful together," Daniel responded. Tom glanced around, taking in the joy radiating from the people gathered. It's a reflection of the hard work we put in, not just in the garden, but in building these relationships. It's what makes life rich. As darkness fell, fairy lights strung around the garden came to life, illuminating the space with a warm, welcoming glow. The sound of laughter and music filled the air, and the community danced, celebrating not just the harvest, but the connections they had forged. In the midst of the festivities, Daniel took a moment to step back and soak it all in. He thought about how far he had come, from a man haunted by his past to one who had found purpose and community. It was a testament to the power of second chances and the strength that comes from embracing vulnerability. As the night continued, Daniel and Tom gathered with a small group of volunteers around the fire pit, where they shared stories and reflected on their journey together. The flames flickered and crackled, providing warmth against the cool evening air. "I've learned so much from you all," Tom said, looking around at the group. "It's not just about gardening, it's about resilience and hope. We've created something that will continue to grow, even after the harvest." Daniel nodded, feeling a deep sense of connection to each person gathered. This garden represents so much more than just plants. It's our shared experiences, our laughter, and our stories. It connects us all. As the festival began to wind down, Daniel felt a wave of emotion wash over him. He had come to understand that life, much like a garden, was a mix of challenges and triumphs. There would always be storms to weather, but with support and community they could navigate through anything. In the following weeks, as winter approached, the garden took on a different character. The vibrant colors of summer faded into earthy tones, and the community began to plan for the next planting season, excited about the potential that spring would bring. During a chilly evening meeting at the community center, Daniel stood in front of a group of dedicated volunteers. "As we prepare for the winter months, let's think about how we can maintain the spirit of the garden, even when it's not in full bloom. Perhaps we can start a winter gardening club or plan indoor workshops." The room buzzed with ideas, and Daniel felt invigorated by the energy in the air. Each suggestion built upon the last, creating a vision for how the community could stay connected throughout the winter months. Tom spoke up, sharing thoughts about winter planting techniques and how they could prepare for the upcoming spring. "We can learn about seed saving, growing indoors, and even planning for the spring garden," he said, his enthusiasm infectious. As the meeting concluded, Daniel felt a sense of renewed purpose. They were not just caretakers of the garden, they were stewards of each other's lives. The relationships they had built were as important as the harvest, and he was determined to nurture them through every season. With winter approaching, Daniel found himself reflecting on the lessons he had learned. The past no longer held him captive. Instead, it served as a guide. He had learned that healing was not linear. It was a journey filled with twists and turns, but with every misstep came an opportunity for growth. One particularly cold evening, as snow began to fall, Daniel sat on his porch with a cup of hot cocoa, gazing at the quiet world around him. The silence was comforting, and he took a moment to appreciate the peace that had settled within him. He thought about Tom and the impact he had made on his life. The older man had shown him the power of forgiveness and the importance of embracing the present. It was a lesson he would carry with him always. As winter progressed, Daniel continued to engage with the community, hosting indoor workshops and gatherings. He found joy in sharing knowledge, whether it was about gardening or simply connecting with others. The bonds they forged became an unbreakable thread that wove through the fabric of their lives. The day finally arrived when spring returned, and with it, the promise of new beginnings. Daniel felt a surge of excitement as he prepared for the first planting of the season. The garden was a tapestry of potential, ready to burst forth with life once again. Together with Tom and the volunteers, they prepped the soil, planted seeds, and nurtured the emerging seedlings. Each moment was a reminder of the journey they had taken together, the struggles and the triumphs that had shaped them. As the garden blossomed, Daniel found himself reflecting on his own growth. He was no longer haunted by the shadows of his past. Instead, he embraced the light that had come from it. The community had become an extension of his family, and the garden a symbol of hope and resilience. One sunny afternoon, as they tended to the vibrant plants, Daniel turned to Tom. "I've realized that this garden is more than just a project. It's a reflection of who we are as a community. We've all grown together, just like these plants." Tom smiled, nodding in agreement. "Exactly. And as we continue to nurture this space, we also nurture our relationships. That's the real beauty of it all." The months passed, and the garden flourished, becoming a hub of activity throughout the summer. Families gathered, children played, and laughter filled the air. The garden had transformed into a sanctuary where everyone felt welcome, a place where stories were shared and memories created. One evening, as the sun set, casting a golden glow over the garden, Daniel and Tom gathered with a group of volunteers to celebrate their successful harvest. They prepared a feast using the fresh produce, and the atmosphere was filled with joy and gratitude. As they sat around the table, Daniel looked around at the faces of his friends and family. He felt an overwhelming sense of belonging, a realization that he had found his place in the world. "Thank you all for being a part of this," Daniel said, his voice filled with emotion. "What we've created here is more than just a garden. It's a community, a family that supports one another through thick and thin." Cheers erupted from the group, and Daniel felt a warmth spread through him. The garden had brought them together, and together they had created something beautiful. As the evening continued, Daniel thought about the journey that had led him here. He was no longer the man burdened by guilt. He was a person filled with hope and purpose. The past had shaped him, but it did not define him. With each passing season, Daniel understood that life was a continuous cycle of growth. There would always be challenges to face, but the connections he had forged would guide him through. As the stars twinkled overhead, Daniel felt a sense of peace. He knew that the journey was far from over, but he was ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. With the love and support of his community, he was confident that they could weather any storm together. In that tranquil moment, surrounded by laughter and friendship, Daniel whispered a silent promise to himself. He would continue to grow, just like the garden that had become a symbol of hope, resilience, and the power of second chances. And as he raised his glass to toast, he felt an undeniable truth settle within him. He was home. As summer faded into autumn, the community garden flourished under the care of its dedicated volunteers. Daniel felt a renewed sense of purpose as he watched his neighbors transform the once barren land into a vibrant tapestry of colors and life. The garden had become a sanctuary, a place where people gathered not only to cultivate plants, but also to nurture relationships. One evening, Daniel prepared for a special workshop focused on preserving the harvest. Excitement filled the air as community members arrived, eager to learn canning and pickling techniques. The aroma of fresh herbs and vegetables wafted through the space, setting the stage for an evening of shared knowledge and laughter. "Welcome, everyone," Daniel called out, his heart swelling with gratitude for the community that had come together. "Tonight we're diving into ways to preserve our harvest and bring the flavors of summer into our winter meals." Tom stood beside him, ready to share his expertise. As they demonstrated various preservation methods, Daniel felt a sense of fulfillment. Each question asked, each story shared, reinforced the bonds among participants. It was a beautiful reminder of the healing power of community, where everyone felt valued and connected. As the workshop concluded, Daniel noticed Mark, a former co-worker and the man he had once feared confronting, slip into the back of the room. Daniel's heart raced as memories of their past flooded his mind, but he greeted Mark warmly, inviting him into the conversation. "Mark, so glad you could make it," Daniel said, his voice steady. "We've been making great progress with the garden." Mark's eyes held a mix of apprehension and recognition. "I've been thinking a lot about the past," he admitted. "I want to be part of this." Daniel felt a surge of hope. "You're always welcome here, Mark. We're a community, and that means we support each other." As the weeks progressed, Mark began attending the workshops regularly. Daniel watched as his former co-worker transformed from a man burdened by regret to an engaged participant. The garden offered a sense of healing for Mark, just as it had for Daniel. They bonded over their shared experiences, and the weight of their pasts began to lift. One evening, as autumn leaves began to fall, Daniel gathered everyone for a potluck to celebrate their achievements. The warmth of friendship filled the air as families shared dishes showcasing the garden's produce. Daniel stood before the crowd, feeling a swell of gratitude for the connections forged through their shared labor. "I want to express my appreciation for each of you," he began, his voice steady. "This garden is a testament to our resilience and the strength of our community." Cheers erupted from the crowd, and Daniel felt a sense of belonging wash over him. The garden was more than just a place for growing food. It was a sanctuary for healing and connection. As the festivities continued, he noticed Mark laughing with a group of children, teaching them how to plant garlic. The joy radiating from him was a powerful reminder of the transformation they had all experienced. As winter approached, the community began to plan for the next planting season. They gathered for meetings at the community center, discussing ways to continue nurturing their relationships even during the colder months. Ideas flowed freely: indoor gardening workshops, winter potlucks, and planning for spring. One crisp evening, Daniel stood in front of the group excited about their future. "I want us to think about how we can keep this community spirit alive throughout the winter. Let's brainstorm ways to support one another and keep growing, even when the garden is resting." The room buzzed with ideas, and Daniel felt invigorated by the energy of those gathered. They discussed extending the garden's reach, perhaps starting a small farmers market to share their produce with the wider community. As they planned, Daniel felt a sense of accomplishment wash over him. The garden had become a source of inspiration, not just for him, but for everyone involved. They were not just cultivating crops, they were cultivating hope, friendship, and resilience. One day, as the first snowflakes began to fall, Daniel took a moment to reflect on the journey he had taken. He was no longer the man haunted by guilt. He was now filled with hope and purpose. The community garden had provided him with the opportunity to grow, and he was grateful for the friendships he had forged along the way. "Mark," Daniel called out one evening as they finished cleaning up after a meeting, "I've been wanting to talk to you about something." Mark turned, curiosity in his eyes. "What's on your mind?" "I've seen how much you've embraced this community," Daniel said, sincerity in his voice. "What do you think about leading a few workshops? You have so much knowledge to share." Mark hesitated, a hint of uncertainty crossing his face. "I'm not sure if I'm ready for that, Daniel. I've been so focused on my own journey." "Sometimes sharing our experiences can be the best way to heal," Daniel encouraged. "You have a unique perspective, and I believe others could benefit from your knowledge." After a moment of contemplation, Mark nodded, a small smile breaking through. "All right, let's give it a try. I'll lead a workshop on the basics of gardening." As winter settled in, the community garden transformed into a peaceful retreat, blanketed in snow. Although the plants lay dormant, the spirit of the garden remained alive in the hearts of those who had nurtured it. They held indoor workshops, shared meals, and continued to support one another through the colder months. Daniel watched as Mark began to flourish, stepping into his role as a leader within the community. One day, as they prepared for an upcoming workshop, Mark approached Daniel with a thoughtful expression. "I wanted to thank you for believing in me. I've realized that facing the past doesn't have to be a lonely journey. You and this community have shown me that it's okay to embrace vulnerability." Daniel smiled warmly. "You've come a long way, Mark. We all have. This garden has given us the chance to heal and grow together." As spring approached, the community buzzed with excitement about the upcoming planting season. They gathered for meetings to discuss their plans and share ideas about the next steps. Daniel felt a sense of anticipation as they brainstormed new initiatives. On a sunny morning, as the first hints of spring appeared, Daniel and the volunteers met at the garden, ready to prepare for the planting season. Bursting with energy, they worked together, readying the soil and planting seeds. The garden was a canvas waiting to be filled with new life. As they dug into the earth, Daniel felt a renewed sense of hope and purpose. The garden was not just a place for growing crops, it was a reflection of all they had accomplished together. In nurturing the garden, they were nurturing themselves and each other. "Let's make this the best season yet," Daniel exclaimed, his heart racing with excitement. With each seed they planted, they sowed the promise of a brighter future. The community garden had become a symbol of resilience, growth, and the power of human connection. And as they worked under the warm sun, Daniel knew that their journey of healing was far from over, but they were ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. Together, they would continue to cultivate hope and nurture the bonds that had blossomed within their community. As the sun dipped low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the community garden, Daniel stood back, wiping the sweat from his brow. The air was filled with the earthy scent of freshly tilled soil, and the laughter of children echoed as they played nearby, their energy infectious. It was a scene he had envisioned over the years, the garden thriving, buzzing with life, and bringing people together. The planting season had begun and the garden was alive with activity. They had expanded their plots, introducing new varieties of vegetables and herbs, and the excitement among the community was palpable. Daniel felt a renewed sense of purpose, a connection to the earth and the people he had come to cherish. Each seed planted was a symbol of hope, a promise of what was to come. One afternoon, as the group gathered to discuss their plans for the season, Daniel addressed them with a smile. "I can't believe how far we've come. Our community is not just growing food, we're growing friendships, knowledge, and resilience. I'm proud of every one of you." Tom nodded, a warm smile on his face. "We've built something special here, Daniel, and it wouldn't have been possible without your leadership and vision." Daniel felt a rush of gratitude at Tom's words. "But it's not just me. We've all played a part in this. Every single person here has contributed, and that's what makes us strong." As the meeting progressed, they discussed upcoming workshops, planned a community harvest festival, and shared ideas for enhancing the garden. The spirit of collaboration was alive and well, and Daniel couldn't help but feel optimistic about their future. Days turned into weeks, and the garden flourished under the care and dedication of its volunteers. The vibrant colors of green, red, and yellow painted a picture of abundance. People from all walks of life came together, sharing stories and laughter as they worked side by side. Mark had blossomed into a key member of the community, stepping into a mentorship role. He organized workshops where he taught others about gardening techniques and the importance of sustainable practices. Daniel watched in awe as Mark's confidence grew, his once quiet demeanor replaced by enthusiasm and passion. One sunny afternoon, as they prepared for another workshop, Daniel approached Mark. "You're doing an incredible job with the workshops. It's amazing to see how much you've embraced this community." Mark smiled, a hint of pride lighting up his face. "I've learned so much from you and everyone else. It feels good to give back, to share what I've learned." "You've come a long way," Daniel replied, feeling a sense of camaraderie. "Remember how hesitant you were at first? You've transformed not just yourself but inspired others along the way." As the seasons continued to change, the community garden became a hub of activity. Families gathered for potlucks, sharing dishes made from their harvest. Children laughed as they learned to plant seeds and care for the earth. The bonds among the volunteers deepened, and Daniel felt a profound sense of belonging. One evening, as they gathered for a particularly festive potluck, Daniel stood up to address the crowd. "I want to take a moment to celebrate what we've created together. This garden symbolizes not only our hard work, but the friendships and connections that have flourished here." The crowd erupted in applause, their smiles shining in the warm glow of string lights that adorned the garden. Daniel felt a rush of emotion, the realization that this was more than just a garden. It was a family. As the evening progressed, Daniel noticed a woman standing alone at the edge of the gathering. She looked familiar but distant, her expression a mix of hope and uncertainty. With a sense of purpose, Daniel approached her. "Hey there, I'm Daniel," he said with a warm smile. I don't think we've met yet. The woman hesitated before replying. I'm Sarah. I've heard so much about this garden. I've been meaning to come, but it's intimidating. Daniel's heart went out to her. I understand. It can feel overwhelming at first, but this is a welcoming community. We're all here to support each other regardless of experience. Sarah's gaze softened. I've wanted to get involved in something meaningful, but I didn't know where to start. Why not join us? Daniel suggested. We have workshops and activities planned regularly. You can learn at your own pace. Everyone here started somewhere. A small smile broke through her apprehension. That would be nice. I'd love to learn more about gardening. As the festival continued, Daniel felt a renewed sense of responsibility to create an environment where everyone felt valued. He knew that the garden could be a place of healing for Sarah, just as it had been for him and so many others. The months flew by, and as summer reached its peak, the garden was bursting with produce. The community prepared for their first annual harvest festival, an event to celebrate the bounty they had cultivated together. Excitement buzzed in the air as they planned activities, games, and food tastings, eager to share their success with the wider community. On the day of the festival, Daniel arrived early, his heart racing with anticipation. Colorful banners fluttered in the breeze, and tables filled with fresh produce lined the pathways. Families began to gather, laughter and music filling the atmosphere. As the festival kicked off, Daniel felt a profound sense of pride wash over him. The garden had become a place where friendships were forged, lessons were learned, and hope flourished. He watched as Sarah joined in, her demeanor radiating confidence as she helped organize activities for the children. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the festivities, Daniel gathered everyone around for a closing speech. Thank you all for being part of this incredible journey. This garden represents not just the fruits of our labor, but the connections we've built along the way. Together, we've nurtured something beautiful, and I couldn't be prouder of what we've accomplished. Cheers erupted from the crowd, and Daniel felt a rush of gratitude for the community that had embraced him. He looked around, seeing familiar faces filled with joy and pride. As the evening came to a close, Daniel felt a sense of fulfillment that ran deeper than he had ever imagined. The garden had become a part of him, and he was eager to see where the journey would lead next. As the stars twinkled above, Daniel whispered a silent promise to the garden and to himself. He would continue to nurture this community, cultivating hope, connection, and love for years to come. The journey of healing and growth was far from over, and he was ready to embrace whatever lay ahead, standing strong with the community he had helped to create. As the sun set on the harvest festival, the community garden sparkled with fairy lights, illuminating smiling faces and filled with the sounds of laughter and joy. Daniel felt a profound sense of fulfillment as he watched families gather around tables overflowing with the fruits of their labor. Each vibrant dish reflected their hard work and the connections they had nurtured over the seasons. As the festivities continued, Daniel took a moment to step back, allowing himself to soak in the atmosphere. The garden, once a simple plot of land, had transformed not only into a place of growth but also into a sanctuary of hope and healing. The friendships forged here had given him a sense of belonging that he never thought possible. In that moment of reflection, he spotted Sarah, the woman he had met at the festival, chatting animatedly with a group of children as they prepared to participate in a seed-planting activity. Her initial uncertainty had melted away, replaced by a warm glow of confidence. Daniel smiled, knowing that the garden had already begun to work its magic on her, just as it had for him. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the garden, Daniel gathered everyone for a closing circle. I want to thank all of you for being a part of this journey, he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Tonight is not just about celebrating the harvest, it's about celebrating each of you and the connections we've built along the way. A wave of applause erupted from the crowd, and Daniel felt a rush of gratitude wash over him. These people had become his family, sharing not only a love for gardening but also a commitment to supporting one another through life's challenges. As the circle continued, He noticed Mark standing off to the side, watching the festivities with a smile. Daniel approached him, feeling a deep sense of camaraderie. "You've come a long way, my friend," he said, clapping Mark on the back. "Look at how much you've grown in this community." Mark chuckled, his warmth evident. "I owe a lot of that to you, Daniel. You showed me that facing my past didn't have to be a lonely journey." Daniel nodded, feeling a swell of pride for Mark's transformation. "We all have our struggles, but this garden has given us a chance to heal together. It's incredible to witness." As the night wore on, Daniel felt a sense of bittersweet joy. The festival was a celebration of their collective efforts, but it was also a reminder that the garden would soon enter a period of rest as winter approached. The warmth of community would have to carry them through the colder months. Later that evening, as the last of the guests began to depart, Daniel lingered in the garden, watching as the lights twinkled against the night sky. He reflected on how far he had come, from a man burdened by guilt and regret to someone who had found purpose and connection in the most unexpected places. Just as he was about to leave, he noticed Sarah walking towards him, a hesitant smile gracing her lips. "Hey, Daniel," she said softly. "I just wanted to say thank you for encouraging me to come here. This has been a life-changing experience for me." Daniel felt warmth spread through him. "I'm so glad to hear that, Sarah. The garden is a place for everyone to find their own path." "I've been thinking," she continued, her expression contemplative. "I'd love to help out more, maybe lead some workshops of my own. Gardening is something I've always wanted to learn more about, and I think I have some creative ideas we could explore together." "That's a fantastic idea," Daniel replied, his excitement evident. "We can work on planning some indoor workshops during the winter months. It would be a wonderful way to stay connected and keep the spirit of the garden alive." As they spoke, Daniel felt a renewed sense of hope for the future. The garden had become a place of transformation, not just for him, but for everyone who had been a part of it. Each person brought their unique talents and perspectives, enriching the experience for all. In the weeks that followed, the community gathered to discuss plans for the winter months. They brainstormed ideas for workshops focused on indoor gardening, cooking with seasonal produce, and even arts and crafts inspired by nature. Daniel felt invigorated by the enthusiasm in the room, knowing that the garden spirit would continue to thrive, even during the coldest months. On a chilly afternoon, Daniel stood in the garden with a small group of volunteers, preparing to plant garlic for the winter. The air was crisp, yet a sense of warmth enveloped them, fueled by the camaraderie they had built over the seasons. As they worked, Daniel turned to Mark, who was deep in conversation with a new volunteer. "It's amazing how this garden keeps bringing people together," Daniel said, feeling grateful for the connections they had formed. Mark nodded, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. "You know, Daniel, I was thinking about how this garden has been a metaphor for life. We plant seeds, nurture them, and sometimes we have to let go, but every season brings new opportunities for growth." Daniel reflected on Mark's words, feeling struck by the wisdom in them. "You're right. Each year is a chance to start fresh, to learn from the past while looking forward to what's ahead." As the winter months rolled in, the community remained engaged. They held regular meetings, continued their workshops, and even started a book club centered around themes of growth and resilience. The friendships deepened, and the garden spirit stayed alive, despite the chill outside. On one particularly cold evening, as the group gathered indoors, Daniel felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him. They were not just tending to plants. They were cultivating relationships, nurturing each other's dreams, and building a community that stood together through thick and thin. As he looked around at the faces of his friends, old and new, Daniel realized that the journey had come full circle. The garden had not only transformed the land, it had transformed their lives. Each person had a place, a role, and a story that intertwined with the others, creating a rich tapestry of connection. And as winter settled in, Daniel whispered a silent promise to the garden and to himself. No matter the season, He would continue to nurture the bonds they had built, embracing both the struggles and the joys that lay ahead. Together, they would weather any storm, and when spring returned, the garden would bloom once more, filled with hope and new beginnings. As winter settled over Columbia, Missouri, a blanket of snow transformed the community garden into a serene wonderland. The vibrant colors of summer had faded, but the spirit of the garden remained alive in the hearts of its caretakers. Daniel felt a deep sense of gratitude as he walked through the quiet paths, now lined with white drifts and sparkling icicles. The community had remained engaged throughout the cold months. Indoor workshops flourished, where families gathered to learn about cooking with seasonal produce and exploring creative crafts inspired by nature. Daniel watched as friendships deepened, laughter filled the air, and connections grew stronger even in the absence of blooming plants. One evening, they held a special gathering, a celebration of their achievements and a toast to the promise of spring. As the volunteers gathered around a crackling fire in the community center, Daniel stood before them, his heart swelling with pride. "Tonight we celebrate not just what we've accomplished, but the spirit of our community," he began, his voice steady. "Through every season, we've nurtured not only a garden but each other. You've all become family to me." Cheers erupted from the crowd, and Daniel couldn't help but smile at the familiar faces beaming back at him. Among them was Mark, who had blossomed into a mentor figure, sharing his gardening knowledge with newcomers like Sarah, who had found her place in the community. The transformation was remarkable. It filled Daniel with hope for the future. As the evening continued, they shared stories of their growth, both as individuals and as a community. Each person recounted moments of joy and struggle, reflecting on how the garden had provided a safe haven for healing. Daniel felt a sense of belonging that resonated deep within him. Later in the evening, as the fire's embers glowed, Mark approached Daniel. "You've created something incredible here," he said, a serious note in his voice. "I've been thinking a lot about how far we've come, and I want to keep this going. How about we plan a spring festival to kick off the new planting season?" Daniel's eyes lit up with excitement. "That's a brilliant idea. We can invite the entire community, showcase our workshops, and share the bounty of the garden. It will be a great way to celebrate new beginnings." Mark nodded, enthusiasm evident in his expression. "Let's get the planning started right away. I know everyone will be thrilled to participate." As they began to brainstorm ideas for the festival, Daniel felt a surge of inspiration. This event would symbolize the hard work and dedication of the community, a celebration of resilience and hope. They discussed activities, workshops, and ways to engage families. In the months leading to spring, the air buzzed with anticipation. The community came together to prepare the garden for new growth, each person contributing their time and energy. Daniel felt proud of how the garden had become a mosaic of human connection and support. As the first hints of warmer weather arrived, Daniel stood in the garden envisioning the vibrant blooms that would soon fill the beds. He knew that the upcoming festival would not just mark the beginning of a new season, but also celebrate the strength of the relationships they had cultivated. When the day finally arrived, the garden blossomed with life. Laughter and music filled the air as families gathered, united by a shared love for the land and the community they had built. Daniel smiled, knowing that this garden had given them all something precious, a place to grow, heal, and thrive together. And in that moment, he understood the true power of resilience and connection, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead.